Hey everybody, Paul from Cary Estate Planning. I wanted to talk for a moment about what you should be looking for in an estate planning lawyer if that's what you're in the process of doing right now. If you're looking around in your market for the right fit, these are generally some points that indicate not only an experienced and skilled lawyer, but someone who's invested in it long term. So first is going to be somebody who's accessible, right? You're going to want somebody who's approachable, who's not intimidating, who has an office, relatively close to yours, or does phone consultations, however their initial process starts, for free, right? You generally want to have that discussion with someone who does value time and thinks that their time is valuable, but doesn't want to put up barriers to entry for a planning process that's already difficult to talk about. So free consultations and accessibility is usually something you want to look for. You're also going to want to look for a relationship-centric model, right? So generally what that means is the lawyer is invested in the long term. It's not just a transactional practice. They're not just doing dollars for documents. It's making sure that the plan always works, and should something happen down the road, not only are they maintaining communication long term, but they're accessible long term. So they're making sure that if they move, they're letting you know. They're making sure that if you have a call, it's not going to be met with a phone call invoice or an email invoice, those sorts of things. Because ultimately, while we put these plans in place now, life happens and they evolve. So your lawyer should be there for you, and they shouldn't punish you for just life happening generally, right? You also want somebody who's only going to be acting in your best interest, and that's usually starting with an education-based platform. So when you meet for a consultation, they're informing you about how the law works in North Carolina specifically, how real estate passes, what's controlled by the will, when a trust may be appropriate, things that you have to consider as a parent or as an individual who's going through the planning process potentially for the first time. You want to figure out sort of the lay of the land and make the most educating decision for yourself and for your family that you possibly can. You simply just don't know what you don't know. So you're relying on the lawyer to plug the gaps or give you that at least baseline education of how things really work in North Carolina. Not what they want you to believe, but how it actually does work. You want someone who's going to be operating on a fixed fee, meaning that there's no hourly rates. They're not incentivized to take longer. They're incentivized to provide value for a specific amount, right? So that improves efficiency. That makes sure that there's total transparency on how their billing works. And it makes sure that if you've got ongoing issues, if you've got a lot of questions between the consultation and the signing meetings, that they're answered and you're not going to get billed for that. Fixed fee means that it's not a moving target, and you're not going to be surprised at the end with an invoice that just wasn't discussed ahead of time, right? You're generally going to want somebody who has what I call a true fiduciary philosophy, meaning that they're only going to give you or recommend for you what's in your best interest. And generally that's after they've done a very in-depth discovery process, getting into the details of your family, your wishes, your fears, those sorts of things. So it's not a cookie cutter proposition. It's not a baked strategy that they're recommending for everyone who comes in the door. It's something that's specific to you and based largely on your risk tolerance. So after that robust education process and that discovery process at the beginning, and likely prior to the consultation if it's done correctly, then we're really assessing what is in your best interest, not what's generally in someone's best interest, but what is right for you. So that's a very narrowly tailored approach that's based on your needs and your risk tolerance. You're also going to want to make sure that the process doesn't take forever. You generally want to have some finality to at least the initial phase, which is going to be the planning and signing, relatively short term, right? You generally don't want it to take longer than a month, potentially shorter depending on if you've got things going on, right? You also want to make sure that there's no surprises, that you have a lay of the land as far as the process. Where do we go from here? You shouldn't be left with a lot of questions after you're leaving the consultation, right? You're generally going to want someone who's open to and actually encourages coordination with other skilled professionals who may supplement your legal process or your legal plan. People like your financial advisor and your CPA and other skilled financial team members that complete the process or really close the circle, right? This is what I would call your personal board of directors. So you're going to want someone who is not only open to those communications and coordination, but encourages it and doesn't charge you for it. So that's part of that initial planning fee. It's all wrapped in, right? Making sure that if you do a trust-based plan, it's going to be effectuated properly by changing beneficiary designations, changing the titling of assets if that's appropriate, and those sorts of things. Well, you should be able to rely on your lawyer to make those points of contact and reach out and make sure that that's being done, so that we don't have this disconnect where your plan was signed but the financial side didn't line up with it. So that's generally what you should be looking for. You're also going to be looking for somebody who just wants to maintain that relationship really in perpetuity. So you're going to be getting, consistent touches over time. Things like email check-ins, things like 90-day and annual reviews, things that just make it very easy to just reply, just to pick up the phone or reply on the email and just touch base with your lawyer if you need to. You're generally looking for all of this in one lawyer, right? You're generally looking for something that's approachable, easy for you to understand, easy for you to participate in, right? You're generally going to want somebody who more matches your temperament and your style as well. So if like the stuffy, suit and tie and those sort of things just aren't your style, then you should be able to find a lawyer who doesn't have that, right? Who doesn't prefer that as well. You're going to want to be comfortable during your meeting process and not feel intimidated in addressing something that's just not authentic to you, right? So when you're assessing, who may be a good fit for you, these are all very good, characteristics of an estate planning lawyer that is generally going to be in your best interest. If you've got additional questions or any follow-up or clarification based on that, just let me know. Comment below, shoot me an email, paul@caryestateplanning.com. Happy to discuss.